I was standing in the kitchen doorway, the dim light above the stove flickering like a bad omen, when I heard it. "We don't need this old witch in the house." His voice, my son-in-law's, cut through the silence like a blade. Sharp, casual, cruel. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was holding the edge of the counter, steadying myself, trying to make sense of the words hanging in the air like cigarette smoke. My daughter didn't say a word. She was sitting at the table, nodding faintly, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea I had just made for her. Her silence said more than any protest ever could. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight from the window cast shadows that looked like bars on the wall. A prison. That's what it felt like. My own home had become a place where I was tolerated at best, despised at worst. I replayed it all in my mind. The day they moved in, the promises they made, the gratitude they once showed. How he hugged me the first time I paid his car insurance, called me Mama when I bailed them out of that debt. Lies, all of it. Now I was a burden. An inconvenience. A witch. And the worst part? My daughter, the same girl whose hair I braided every morning before school, the girl I sat beside in the hospital when she had her first miscarriage, she didn't defend me. She didn't flinch. She just let it happen. Maybe they thought I hadn't heard. Maybe they thought I was too old, too slow, too harmless to do anything about it. But I had heard, and I was wide awake. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. I didn't say a word about what I'd overheard. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to know if they could look me in the eye and still pretend. They did. He asked for extra bacon. She thanked me with a kiss on the cheek. That hurt more than the insult. That they could pretend so easily. That they had probably said worse things when I wasn't around. I ate in silence, my fork barely scraping the plate. My heart was thudding, slow and heavy, like a drumbeat in the distance. After they left for work, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I looked around. Every chair, every curtain, every fork in that kitchen had a story. I had paid for all of it. I had built this home with my hands, with my husband before he passed. And now, I was nothing more than a nuisance. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I pulled out a pad of paper and a pen from the drawer. And I began making a list. Not of groceries, not of chores. A list of names. A list of places. A list of steps. Because if they thought the old witch was going to fade away quietly, they were in for a surprise. The next morning, she knocked on my door. Soft, hesitant, like a child trying not to wake a sleeping bear. I opened it with a smile. She held a few glossy brochures in her hand, the kind printed with pastel colors and fake happiness, compassionate care for your golden years. "Mom," she said, "we just want what's best for you." Her voice was too calm. Rehearsed. Like someone reading a script. I took the brochures and nodded, pretending to read them. Oakwood Gardens. Peaceful Pines. Names that tried to sound gentle, but all I could hear was, "Go away quietly." I didn't ask her why. I didn't ask her when. I didn't need to. I had heard enough the night before. Instead, I asked myself something else. Had I really become a burden? I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, holding those papers like they were made of thorns. I stared at the framed photo on my nightstand, me and her, laughing in the kitchen, flour on our faces, baking her birthday cake when she turned 10. How do you go from being someone's whole world to being an unwanted presence in their home? Maybe I had stayed too long. Maybe I had given too much. Maybe comfort had made her forget gratitude. I looked around my room. My sanctuary. My last space. The lace curtains I'd sewn by hand. The quilt I stitched after her father passed away, every square a memory. And soon, what? A twin bed in a shared room with linoleum floors and nurses who smile out of obligation. No, I wasn't ready to be tucked away like a forgotten piece of furniture. She left the brochures on my dresser and walked out with the same quiet steps she'd entered. As soon as the door closed, I picked up my journal. It was time to stop asking if I was the problem. It was time to start answering for myself. I wrote just one sentence that day: "They want me gone, but I'm not done yet." That afternoon, I sat in the living room, surrounded by ghosts. Not real ones, photographs. They were everywhere. On the mantel, a picture of her 5th grade graduation, gap-toothed and beaming, holding her certificate like it was a Nobel Prize. On the bookshelf, her wedding photo, back when she married her first husband, the one who never raised his voice and always called me Senora, out of respect. And on the side table, a photo of us in the hospital, her face pale from surgery, my hand wrapped around hers, my eyes swollen from worry. I had been there for every fall, every heartbreak, every scraped knee and every dream she'd once believed in. So how did I become disposable? I ran my fingers along the edge of the photo frame. My hands, once strong and firm, now carried the tremble of age. But they still remembered how to braid hair, how to hold a baby, how to build a life from scratch. I looked around the room. The couch they lounged on? I bought it. The coffee table? I assembled it myself when they were too busy. Even the television remote they always lost, I was the one who found it, every time. When her husband lost his job, who paid their rent? When she had complications with her pregnancy, who paid the bills that insurance wouldn't touch? Me. And I never once asked for thanks. Never once made her feel like a burden. So why was I now the burden? I remembered one winter night, just last year, when she cried at the table because they couldn't afford Christmas gifts for the kids. I sold a piece of jewelry her father had given me, one of the last things he'd ever bought me, so they wouldn't feel ashamed. They never asked me to. But they also never told me to stop. And maybe that was the problem. I had given too freely. Too often. Too quietly. I had trained them to believe I was bottomless. But now they wanted to send me away, like a suitcase that no longer zipped closed. My throat tightened. Not from sadness. From clarity. I stood up and walked to the hallway mirror. Looked at myself. Not the mother, not the grandma, not the old woman in the way, but me. I was still here. And maybe it was time I started living like I mattered. 2 days later, I went to the coffee shop down the street. Not the trendy one my daughter liked, the one with almond milk and prices that made my eyebrows jump. No, this was a corner cafe, old and steady, with chipped tables and the smell of burnt espresso lingering like perfume from the past. I didn't go there often anymore. But that morning, something pulled me there. And I'm glad it did. Because sitting by the window, hunched over a small notebook with her reading glasses on the tip of her nose, was Martha. Martha, with her always perfect lipstick and that scarf she wore like armor. We used to volunteer together at the community pantry. But life, and children, had pulled us in different directions. I tapped her shoulder gently. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Dulce," she said, "you look like you've seen a ghost." "Close," I whispered, sliding into the chair across from her. I heard my own funeral being planned, by my daughter. Her face went still. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small folder. "Then you need to read this," she said. Inside was a copy of a legal form. A new will. Beneficiary protections. Durable power of attorney. "I thought it would never happen to me either," Martha said. "Until my son signed me up for a trial stay at a care facility while I was still recovering from knee surgery. That was last year. I checked myself out and rewrote everything. My money, my house, none of it goes to him now." I stared at her, stunned. "You really did that?" "I had to," she said. "I love my family, but I refuse to be used." Her voice wasn't bitter. It was steady, like mine used to be. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't stuck. I still had choices. I pulled a napkin from the table and started scribbling notes, names, questions, reminders. Martha leaned in. "Don't let them guilt you. Don't let them talk you out of your own life." I smiled for the first time in days. The seed had been planted. And deep down, I knew it was going to grow. 3 days later, I walked into the public library like I was entering a church. Quiet, humble, full of answers no one had time to look for anymore. I hadn't been there in years. Not since I used to take my grandson for story time. But the air still smelled the same, old paper and possibility. I went straight to the computer section and asked the young librarian for help. She showed me how to log in, how to search for what I needed. I typed slowly at first: estate planning for seniors. How to protect your assets from family manipulation. What to include in a will if you're being pressured. I didn't know the language, but I knew the feeling. And then, a phrase on one of the articles stopped me cold. The way you leave your assets speaks volumes about your values. I read it twice, 3 times. It hit me in the chest. Because for so long, I had lived with this idea that love had to be earned with sacrifice, that my money was a stand-in for affection, that giving was the only way to stay needed. But what if I could speak even louder in silence? What if my final message, on paper, notarized and signed, could tell the truth they never let me say out loud? That I was more than a wallet with wrinkles. That I had seen everything. That I had decided, finally, to draw a line. I sat there reading for almost 2 hours. I learned about trusts, about letters of intent, about legal witnesses and video statements. I learned that I wasn't alone. This happened more often than people admitted. At one point, the librarian came over to check on me. I smiled and said, "I'm learning something important." And I was. I left the library with a list in my purse and something stronger than anger in my heart. Clarity. Because now, I didn't just want to protect my assets. I wanted to protect myself. The office was smaller than I expected. No gold plaques, no expensive artwork. Just a quiet waiting room, soft jazz playing low, and a receptionist who offered me tea instead of water. That already told me I had chosen right. I found his name online, Mr. Elias Duarte. Recommended in a forum for elder financial protection. They said he listened. Really listened. He did. He was maybe in his late 40s, with graying temples and kind eyes behind square glasses. When he asked, "What brings you in today, Ms. Dulce?" I felt my throat tighten. I didn't start with the insult, or the brochures, or the fact that my daughter was pretending it was all for my well-being. No, I started with the truth. I've given them everything, and now they want me out. He didn't interrupt, just nodded, pen resting on his notepad, waiting. "I'm not afraid of being alone," I said. "I'm afraid of being erased. I want to make sure my life, what I built, goes where I choose. Not where they expect." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you feel safe in your home?" That question caught me off guard. Did I? "I'm not being hurt," I replied. "Not physically. But," I paused. "There's a difference between safety and dignity." He nodded again. "Exactly." And in that moment, I knew he was the right one. He outlined the steps. Revoke any old wills, create a new one, assign a durable power of attorney, someone I trust, not someone who just shares my blood. He even mentioned the option of a video statement, in case they tried to claim I wasn't in my right mind. I asked if it was too soon. He looked at me and said, "It's never too early to protect yourself. It's only too late when someone else is signing the papers for you." That hit me hard. We began drafting everything that afternoon. Names, percentages, charitable gifts, medical wishes. I left nothing to chance. As I signed the initial paperwork, I glanced at my own signature. Firm, steady, still mine. And in that small office, with a stack of legal documents and the soft hum of jazz behind me, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not the kind that shouts. The kind that whispers, "You're not done yet." A few evenings later, I asked if I could go through the garage. "I'm looking for the old photo albums," I told my daughter. "The ones from when you were little." She didn't question it. Why would she? To them, I was just puttering around, harmless, sentimental. But I had a different mission. I knew where my original will was. I had tucked it away years ago, inside a manila envelope, in a plastic bin marked, "Taxes." Nobody ever touches the tax box. I found it right where I remembered, beneath a stack of holiday lights and half-deflated pool toys. My fingers brushed over the envelope, and for a moment, I felt that familiar pang of loyalty. I had once named them both, my daughter and her husband, as joint beneficiaries. Back when I still believed that love and sacrifice guaranteed protection. Not anymore. I slid the envelope into my purse while pretending to cough. Then, with a slow deliberate motion, I reached into the bin and began taking out old papers, bank statements, receipts, expired warranties. I shoved them into a trash bag. A decoy. Found what I need, I called out with a smile. She poked her head into the garage. You sure you don't want me to help? Oh no, I said. It's good for me. Keeps me busy. That night, while they watched TV in the living room, laughing at a show I used to enjoy, I sat in my room shredding papers. Not everything, just the ones they could use to piece together my plans. Old account numbers, past insurance info, clues they might latch onto later. I wasn't being paranoid, I was being careful, because I had seen what desperation looks like. And desperation, in people who think they deserve your life's work, is dangerous. I tucked the original will into a folder marked Donation Records, and placed it in my own closet, deep behind my winter coats. Then I made tea, as I always did. Routine is the best disguise. From the kitchen, I heard my son-in-law laughing louder than usual. Maybe he was proud of how smoothly things were going. How easy it had been to nudge me toward the edge of their lives. Let him laugh. Let them both feel safe. Because when people underestimate you, they forget to watch their backs. And I had just taken the first step toward rewriting the ending of this story. 2 days later, they sat me down like a child who'd broken a lamp. It was after dinner. I was still holding my mug of chamomile tea when my son-in-law cleared his throat and said, "So, we've got some good news, Dulce." I already knew it wouldn't be good. He slid a brochure across the table, another one, glossier than the last. "This place is lovely," he said. "We visited it this morning. Clean rooms, daily activities, a garden. You'll have your own space." My daughter smiled weakly. "They have bingo night. Remember how you used to love bingo?" Used to. That little phrase always cuts. I didn't say anything, just took a sip of my tea. Then came the real blow. "We went ahead and scheduled your move-in date," he said, his voice calm, like he was confirming a hair appointment. October 1st. A date. Set in stone. No discussion. Just, decided. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes darted away. That was the part that hurt. I could forgive stupidity, even cruelty, but cowardice? That stung. I set my cup down slowly, careful not to make a sound. Silence is a weapon when you know how to use it. "Oh," I said gently. "That soon? It's better to do it now before the weather gets bad," my daughter added, her voice thinner than usual. "You know, before the holidays. Before the holidays. Because nothing ruins a festive dinner like the presence of an inconvenient mother." I smiled and nodded. "Well," I said, folding the brochure, "if it's already arranged, then I suppose I'll need to start packing." They both looked surprised, almost disappointed. They expected tears, maybe begging, but I gave them calm. Because calm unnerves people more than rage ever could. I stood up, gathered the dishes, and began washing them as if we'd just finished a normal dinner. As if they hadn't just shoved me out of the life I helped build. As the water ran over my hands, I stared out the window, watching the porch light flicker. October 1st. Good. It gave me time. Time to finish what I'd started. Time to make sure that when I walked out that door, it would be with my head high, and their illusions shattered. 3 days later, I walked into the bank. Not my usual one, a different branch, in the next town over. One they didn't know existed. The teller, a young man with kind eyes, greeted me politely. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" I smiled, holding my purse a little tighter. "I'd like to open a new account, please. Under my name only." He nodded and led me to a private desk. As we went through the forms, I carefully transferred a portion of my savings into the new account. Not everything, just enough to feel the shift inside me. To feel like I had something that belonged only to me. Something untouched by their hands. Unseen by their plans. When it came time to name a beneficiary, I didn't even hesitate. I gave it to Mateo, my youngest grandson. The only one who ever came to visit me just to talk. The one who sat with me during my knee recovery and asked about my favorite books. He was 16 now, still soft around the eyes, still kind. He didn't know it yet, but I had just given him a seed for his future. And for the first time in weeks, I felt solid. Like a woman standing on her own 2 feet. After the paperwork was done, I walked out into the parking lot and sat in my car. The engine idled quietly, and I let myself breathe. I thought about all the times I'd sat in that other bank branch, quiet, invisible, making transfers for rent they never paid, groceries they never thanked me for. And now here I was. No audience, no applause, just quiet victory. I drove home slowly, the sun already beginning to dip behind the hills. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the porch light was finally out. Burned through after blinking for weeks. No one had bothered to change it. That light, I thought, used to be my job. But not anymore. Inside, they were on the couch again. Laughing. Watching something loud and stupid. "Hey, Mom," my daughter called out. "Everything okay?" I smiled and hung up my coat. "Just fine," I said. "I took care of a few things." She didn't ask what. She never asked. And that suited me perfectly. Because from now on, the only people I'd explain myself to were the ones who deserved the truth. The second time I walked into Mr. Duarte's office, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. He greeted me with the same calm smile, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I've got everything drafted, Ms. Dulce. Just as you asked." I took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's do it." One by one, we reviewed the documents. My new will was clear. My daughter and her husband would receive nothing. Not $1. Not a keepsake. Everything I had, the savings, the house, even the little family heirlooms tucked away in the attic, would go to my grandchildren, split evenly. And to the local community center where I volunteered before they moved in. The place where I used to laugh. It felt right. "They might contest this," Mr. Duarte warned gently, sliding the pages toward me. "Let them try," I said, signing with slow, deliberate strokes. He watched me for a moment. "You're sure?" I looked him in the eye. "Mr. Duarte, I've spent a lifetime giving people the benefit of the doubt. And look where it got me." He didn't push, just nodded. We went through the rest of the paperwork, power of attorney, advanced directives, final wishes. It was like sewing up a wound I had ignored for years. Every page a stitch. As I signed the last form, I felt the faintest tremble in my fingers. But it wasn't fear. It was strength returning. Before I left, Mr. Duarte handed me a folder and said, "I recommend recording a video message. For clarity, and in case they try to twist things. I'll come back for that," I promised. Soon. Outside, the autumn wind had picked up. The trees were shedding their leaves like secrets, and for the first time in weeks, I noticed how beautiful it was. I sat in my car, holding the folder to my chest. It was done. On paper, at least. There were still weeks until October 1st. But I had already taken back something more valuable than any inheritance. Control. And the funny thing is, when you take your power back, you don't need to raise your voice. You just stop asking permission. It was well past midnight when I heard them. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was getting up for water, but their voices crept through the thin walls like smoke. "I told you she was stalling," my son-in-law hissed. "She's acting too calm. It's creepy. She's just adjusting," my daughter said, but her tone lacked conviction. "You said she'd be out by October 1st. You promised. We need that room cleared before the baby comes." I froze. The baby? That hadn't been mentioned. And suddenly everything made sense. The urgency, the sudden kindness, the brochures and the fake concern. They needed my space, not my well-being. I wasn't just a burden, I was in the way. Then came the words that sealed it. "She's family," my daughter whispered, almost as if trying to convince herself. "She's money," he snapped back. "And she's about to make things very difficult for us if we don't act fast." I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just stood there, barefoot on the hallway tile, the coolness grounding me in the middle of the storm. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when someone tells you, finally, who they really are. It was never about my health. It was never about helping me. It was always about what I had, and how easily they assumed they could take it. All those years I thought I was building a safety net, a legacy. I was just stocking their pantry. I looked around my bedroom, the last piece of the house that still felt like mine. The soft blue curtains, the quilt I made during my husband's last winter. The photo of us in Paris, laughing over tiny cups of bitter coffee. He would have seen it coming, I thought. He always said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I hadn't, but now? Now I believed every word. I pulled my notebook from the nightstand and added one more line to the list. Record everything. They weren't just planning to erase me from the house. They were planning to erase me from my own life. But I had news for them. I hadn't survived this long to vanish quietly. By the following Tuesday, I was sitting in a quiet notary office across town. No fancy logos, no buzzing phones, just a sturdy desk, a single lamp, and a woman named Gloria who looked like she'd seen it all, and had no time for nonsense. "Everything ready?" she asked, flipping through the stack of papers I'd brought. I nodded. "Yes, this is the final version." She stamped and sealed, each thud of her notary stamp like a drumbeat of closure. I had brought everything, my will, the letter of disinheritance, my advanced directives, even instructions for the community center. Then came the part I'd been dreading. The video. Mr. Duarte had arranged a private space in the office, a small room with a camera, a chair, and a single light pointing down at me. I sat there alone for a moment, gathering my breath. The camera blinked red, waiting. And then I spoke. "My name is Dulce Alvarez. I am of sound mind and body. And today, I am making my choices known, on my terms." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I told the truth. About the years of giving. The silence. The manipulation disguised as concern. The slow erasure of my role as mother, then woman, then person. "I love my family," I said. "But I love myself too. And love without respect isn't love. It's control." I looked straight into the lens. "If you're watching this, it means you tried to take from me what I chose not to give. And I want you to remember, dignity can't be inherited. It must be earned." I clicked the remote to end the recording. Gloria returned, silent and efficient, and handed me a flash drive. Mr. Duarte would keep a copy. One with the will. One in a safety deposit box I opened that same morning. I walked out into the afternoon light feeling unburdened. Not victorious. Not yet. But free. And freedom, after years of being everyone's safety net, felt like something close to flight. I turned off my phone before heading home. Let them wonder where I was. Let them squirm a little. Because from this point on, I wasn't playing the role they wrote for me. I was writing my own ending. A week before the dreaded move, it arrived. A simple envelope. No fancy seal. No bold lettering. Just a plain white letter from Mr. Duarte's office, addressed to my daughter. I watched from the armchair in the living room as she opened it, standing by the kitchen counter, still in her work blouse and heels. She pulled the letter out casually, probably expecting a reminder about a bank account or utility bill. But then I saw it. The shift in her face. Her mouth parted slightly. The color drained from her cheeks. Her eyes scanned the words twice. 3 times. And then she looked at me. Not with confusion. Not with sorrow. With disbelief. You disinherited us?" I didn't answer immediately. I reached for my cup of tea, sipped slowly. Then I looked her square in the eye. "I already did." She stared at me like I had struck her. "You can't do this. This isn't fair." Fair. That word again. So casually thrown around by people who never once considered what fairness looked like from the other side of the fence. "Fair would have been inviting me to be part of your life," I said calmly. "Not just part of your budget." Her voice trembled, suddenly small. "Mom? I don't understand." "Yes, you do," I said. "You just didn't think I would act on it." She sank onto the stool, holding the letter like it was a death sentence. Maybe it was, for the version of the future she thought was guaranteed. I stood, folding the newspaper in my lap. You and your husband planned for my exit. You made arrangements. So did I. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The house was silent, no TV noise, no laughter. Just the hum of the fridge and the sound of her breathing turning shallow. And for the first time, I was the one who felt steady. Not angry, not gloating, just resolved. Because when you spend your life giving and forgiving, people forget you're capable of saying no. Well, I hadn't just said no. I'd put it in writing. And mailed it. Certified. She followed me out to the back patio, still clutching the letter like it might vanish if she held it tight enough. Mom, please, she said, her voice cracking. You're punishing me for trying to help. I turned to face her, the cool breeze catching the ends of my shawl. No, I replied. I'm holding you accountable for pretending it was help. Her mouth opened, then shut. We stood there, the wind moving through the lavender pots I had planted last spring. The same pots she said were clutter when she started planning the patio's makeover. She sat on the bench, shaking her head like a child being scolded. I didn't know you were so angry, she whispered. I'm not angry, I said, sitting beside her. I'm disappointed, and I'm done pretending I'm okay with being treated like a placeholder in my own life. She started crying, soft at first, then louder, until the tears gave way to something else, frustration. It was him, she said suddenly. He pushed me. He kept saying we had to make space, that you were getting too forgetful, too unpredictable. I raised an eyebrow. So you agreed? She paused, then nodded. I looked out at the garden, the same one I'd weeded on sore knees while they stayed inside watching TV. Comfort is a choice, I said softly. And you chose it over me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. You didn't just forget me, I said. You erased me. Her voice cracked. What do I do now? Now? I said, standing slowly. Now you live with your choices, just like I lived with mine. She looked up, eyes red and wide. You're not going to forgive me? I sighed. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And I haven't forgotten a thing. Then I walked back into the house, leaving her on the patio. Because some doors need to stay closed for good. The morning of October 1st, I was up before dawn. I moved quietly through the house, folding my clothes with care, placing my toiletries into a small floral bag, and tucking away the folder from Mr. Duarte. The one with every paper, every safeguard, every boundary they would never cross again. By 7 a.m., I had my suitcase by the door. The light outside was soft, golden. A new kind of morning. I was pouring my last cup of coffee when they came downstairs, him first, shirtless and yawning, then my daughter, bleary-eyed in her robe. Their expressions shifted when they saw the suitcase. Are you leaving? She asked. I nodded. Yes. He scoffed. So you're actually going through with this little drama? I smiled. It's not drama. It's direction. You can't just walk out, he said. Where will you go? I've rented a small condo, I replied. Near the community center. Martha helped me find it. He laughed, that nasty, dismissive sound he always made when he felt threatened. You'll regret this. I picked up my coat, calm as ever. I already regretted trusting you, I said. That part's over. My daughter stepped forward, reaching for my suitcase like she might talk me out of it. Mom, wait. Can we talk? Maybe we rushed things. No, I said firmly. You had weeks to talk. You made your choices. And I made mine. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The air was cool and crisp. Clean. Behind me, he muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care to hear it. I was already free. A cab waited at the curb. I didn't need help with my bag. I walked down the steps slowly, steady, every bone in my body remembering its own strength. The driver opened the trunk. And as he placed my things inside, I turned one last time toward the house I had built, brick by brick, meal by meal, sacrifice by sacrifice. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't wave. Because this wasn't a farewell. It was a beginning. The silence in my new condo was different. It wasn't heavy or sad, it was clean, like fresh sheets after a long day. I could hear the rustle of the wind through the small balcony garden I'd planted, rosemary, lavender, and a stubborn little basil plant that refused to grow straight. I watered them every morning, barefoot, with coffee in hand and no one demanding anything of me. No voices behind closed doors. No judgment in the hallway. No man in my kitchen asking, "When's dinner?" Just me. Just peace. Word spread faster than I expected. My niece called first. Then a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "We heard what happened," they all said. "We had no idea. Are you okay?" I told them the truth. I was better than okay. Some cried. Some apologized for not noticing. Some asked if they could visit. And some didn't call at all. My daughter did. Twice the first day. Then 5 more times throughout the week. Always the same message. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk." But I let it ring. Because I didn't leave so she could feel better. I left so I could feel better. And I did. Each day that passed, I reclaimed something. My time, my voice, my space. I signed up again to volunteer at the community center, helping with the food pantry and tutoring seniors in basic computer skills. They welcomed me back like I had never left. "You've still got that fire," Martha said with a grin. "I knew you wouldn't go quietly." "I'm not built for quiet," I replied. "Not anymore." At night, I read books I had forgotten I owned. I listened to music that made me sway a little in the kitchen. I lit candles just for myself, not to impress anyone or hide the smell of their dinner. And sometimes, just before bed, I opened my folder, the one with the new will, the bank records, the notarized letters, and I smiled. Not out of spite, out of pride, because they may have tried to erase me. But I wrote myself back into the story. Every Thursday morning, I arrive at the community center at 9 o'clock sharp. I bring coffee, strong, the way we like it, and set it on the counter while the rest of the women arrive one by one, with their stories, their bruised hearts, their slow but steady healing. We call ourselves Los Invisibles, but only half jokingly. Because we were invisible once. To our children, to the world, even to ourselves. Now we laugh louder. We take up space. Martha leads the bookkeeping workshop. I run the Modern Tools class, how to use smartphones, navigate online banking, and yes, how to change your will. Every time I watch a woman's eyes light up with understanding, I remember the day I walked into Mr. Duart's office, trembling but ready. We aren't helpless, we're just underestimated, and in that underestimation we find our strength. Last week, my daughter sent a letter. A real one, pen on paper. She said she missed me. That she was sorry. That she wanted to come visit. I read it once, folded it carefully, put it away, not because I hate her, but because healing takes time. And this time, I'm the one who decides when the door opens again. As I sit on the bench outside the center, the late sun warming my back, I think of all I've lost. And all I've reclaimed. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just me again. And finally, that's enough.